What's up, people? Happy Monday. Happy Mingus Monday. Welcome to the Charles Mingus Mondays live on Facebook. The Mingus organization, along with the musicians, are doing this every single Monday for the time being until we're back at it, back at the club. The Mingus Big Band Orchestra and Dynasty is at the Jazz Standard every Monday. But until we're back there, we're right here, live, on the Charles Mingus Facebook page. So we're very glad that you guys have joined us. We're doing this, of course, to keep the tradition of Mondays going, where we play Mingus's music and celebrate his legacy. We're also doing this to help support the musicians in the Mingus Band, to keep them playing, to keep us playing, and hopefully put a little change in our pockets. Speaking of that, before I say anything further, if you want to donate some change, you can go right here to paypal.me, Mingus Bands, and you can hook it up. I'll remind you of that later. So this is the first Mingus Monday that is being done by a horn player, being me. The pressure's on. So what I've decided to do, what we've all decided to do, is take this opportunity to, while playing Mingus's music, plug a beautiful piece of propaganda and educational tool, the Charles Mingus More Than a Play-Along. Some of the songs, in fact, most of the songs I'll be playing today, I'll be accompanied by this play-along. And this play-along features some of the Mingus Band members playing, Mr. Boris Kozlov, Tommy Campbell, and John Hicks, who I had the pleasure of playing with for many years in the band. So, this is a very useful tool for students and also for professionals, as you'll see in a minute. It's a great rhythm section, and we're able to just jam out and play some Mingus music, all right? So I'm gonna stop blabbering. I'm gonna play a little something. The first thing that I'm gonna play is, before I play, I wanna just say, we're gonna entertain questions all throughout this, all right? So I'm gonna play, we'll talk, do a little Q&A, then I'll play some more. So please, if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'm horrible at this whole thing, so hopefully I can keep track of the questions. Hopefully the people in the Mingus organization will help me keep track of some of these questions. But please feel free to ask questions between songs, all right? We'll make this a little back and forth thing. So the first song I want to play, I think quite appropriately, is a composition that's very well known of Mingus's, and I think it's quite appropriate right now. This is called Nostalgia in Times Square, which, believe it or not, I'm feeling very nostalgic for Times Square right about now. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. right. Felt like I was playing with the cats. That's the idea. That's the idea. All right, let me see if there are any questions that we have. Favorite saxophone who played with Mingus? My man, oh, I thought that was somebody else, but it's Theodore Davis. All right, the favorite saxophonists who played with Mingus. Well, I have to say, and of course I'm a little biased, but my teacher, the great Jackie McLean, he played with Mingus, and he's one of the people actually who introduced me to Mingus's music and got me checking it out. And we can talk about this further, but I mean, one of the great things about Mingus's music and the bands that he put together is he always chose people like Jackie McLean. You know, he didn't want that homogenous sound. He really wanted people that that had a unique sound and a unique flavor. And I think one of the great things about Jackie McLean and people like Eric Dolphy, you know, John Handy, the list goes on and on. All the people that Mingus chose to play with him had a really unique sound and a great character. And that's what's so great about J-Mac, that's what's so great about Mingus. And one of the great things about the Mingus band present day is that I think we hold true to that legacy. I mean, if you listen to, of course, even just the saxophones that we use, people like Scott Robinson and Abraham Burton, myself and Alex Foster, you know, Vincent Herring, the list goes on and on. Everyone has a really unique and distinctive sound. So Jackie McLean is one of my favorites. In general, he's one of my favorites who played with Mingus, and that's why. Profile of Jackie, right? Bertrand Uberall, a great fan of Mingus and of music in general, of jazz music in general. He's a great supporter and advocate, and somewhat of a historian, I'd say. Yeah, Profile of Jackie is a great tune, and in fact, did we record that yet? I don't think did we record it on the last record, or we? I think we maybe just recorded that because we did a new album recently. And Profile of Jackie is a great piece that was written in celebration of Jackie McLean. So, yeah. Any other questions so far? All right, anything that I missed? Let's Hong Kong Philharmonic. That's cool. I like that. We're gonna play a little bit more. I'm gonna play another one. You guys think of some questions. Critiques are cool too, but I'm gonna ignore them. Like that dude, he told me to take a breath. I was breathing. You just didn't see it through the flurry of sheets of sound. All right, let's play. What are we gonna play now? Oh, you know what? One of the great things about this Mingus More Than a Play Along is that there are some really great little excerpts of some things that Mingus says about the pieces, and I think that that's very unique. No other real book, you're never going to find that in any other real book, and they're really straight from Mingus's mouth. So I'm going to play this composition, Peggy's Blue Skylight. Before I do, I'm just going to say a little bit of something about it. I'm going to read what's here in this Mingus More Than a Play Along. Peggy's Blue Skylight is a good example of how Mingus altered basic song forms. Only the second half of the 16-bar A section is repeated after the bridge. It is interesting to note that the first two bars are taken almost verbatim from the middle of another Mingus piece, Reincarnation of a Lovebird. There is no fixed form for this tune. Musicians should keep in mind that Mingus always allowed for a flexible interpretation. On the first recording, for instance, the A section is repeated 5 times. Following that recording for Atlantic on November 6, 1961, Mingus kept Skylight as an active part of the repertoire for the next 16 years. About the origins of the piece, he said, this is what Mingus said, "I wrote it on piano at Peggy Hitchcock's house. We were friends. She wanted to take the blue plastic shield from the cockpit of a fighter plane and replace her skylight with it. So the sky would always be blue. The government wouldn't let her do it." So that's Peggy's Blue Skylight. Peggy's Blue Skylight also formed part of Mingus's monumental epitaph suite, written for a 31-piece orchestra and finally premiered posthumously on June 3rd, 1989 at Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York City, with Gunther Schuller conducting. The New York Times called it one of the most important events of the decade. So I think that's pretty cool to have that little history about the tune. And, you know, they mentioned Epitaph, and I was fortunate enough to actually be a part of Epitaph twice, once at Lincoln Center, and then once we went on tour after that. really amazing and very intense piece of music to be a part of, and I'm glad I got a chance to do that. Anyway, we're gonna play a little bit of, when I say we, I mean myself, Boris Kozlov, John Hicks, and Tommy Campbell, virtually. Let's see what we can do here. Peggy's Blue Skylight.
Peggy's Blue Skylight.
Yes.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
See? Bass players always got to get the last word. Anyway, that was Peggy's Blue Skylight. That's a fun song to play. It's in a lot of real books. And again, it's in this fake book. Guys at the Mingus team, feel free to send me a message or something if there's a question that I haven't seen. I'd love to answer some questions. A sweet descending run. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions? The volume was better on this one. That's good. That's good. It's not at noon. Any questions out there? So, I'm trying to think if anyone has any questions, what I should talk about. You have your own picture on the back wall. Yes, the only picture that I have in my home is of myself. That was a question from Scott Robinson. He's my man. That's just this room, Scott. I got this great photo that a photographer in Europe took. I think I don't want to say the wrong thing. I think he's an Italian photographer. I forget his name right now, but it's a really cool picture. And I brought it all the way back from a long tour that I was on, and I got it all the way back here, and I was like, you know what? I'm framing it and putting it up. Liz, anyone? Are there any questions that you guys got from your end? Any questions from your end, guys? Yes, that tune's in D flat.
Hey there, Wayne. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. I do see there are some questions. If you need some help, I know the questions and comments are moving kind of fast.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, but no worries. So I have to circle back to Jackie. We were talking about Jackie earlier. Somebody asked, "What's your favorite Mingus record with Jackie?"
You're gonna catch me off guard because I can't recall which of the ones. I just can't recall right now, to be honest with you. I can't remember which albums J-Mac is on. I gotta research that, and I gotta check which ones he's on so that I can answer that question. That's a good question.
Hey, no worries. I have another question. What do you think about how Mingus chose such unique voices for his band, and how that shaped the sound of his music?
Sure. Well, that person answered that very question. I mean, because he decided to get unique people, that shaped his music. And I mean, in a lot of ways, he was really taking the cue from people before him, like Thelonious Monk and Duke Ellington in particular. You know, I mean, that's what those musicians did too. They made it a point to choose very unique voices. And I think one of the things that Mingus liked to do is he liked to challenge his musicians, and even more than challenge them, he liked to kind of try to mess them up in a way and force them to play outside of their box. So, I mean, I think early on, someone like Jackie McLean was known for obviously having Charlie Parker, having Bird be his main influence. And it said that Mingus told him, like, look, man, you got to get away from that Bird. You know, you got to get away from that Bird and do your own thing. And so Mingus is really one of the people that helped J-Mac get his own sound. And he would do things like write things in a strange key. Someone asked if this tune was in D flat. It is in fact in D flat. And what the funny thing is, D flat is actually a pretty challenging key for the bass. But Mingus always wrote a lot of tunes in these D flat, G flat, these difficult keys. I think to challenge musicians, just to make them, you know, instead of playing their go-to licks and ideas, to push them. So, and like I said earlier, you know, that holds true to today, because I think a big part of the way my sound and my abilities developed the way they did, and even other saxophone players who played in the band before me, like someone like Seamus Blake or a lot of great musicians, I think it's in part due to having to play Mingus's music. You know, you can't really just rely on your same old stuff. You have to figure out a way to make this music flow comfortably for you on your instrument. So it's a back and forth. Not only do the musicians that he chooses affect the music, but the music affects the musicians that he's chosen. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Moving on. When playing live, who picks the selection of tunes?
That's a good question too. I mean, that depends. I think it's somewhat of a democracy. I think sometimes I think sometimes Sue has an idea of what she wants the band to play, depending on what we haven't been playing lately, or what we have been playing lately, or what we're preparing for. And so Sue and also her people that help her in the office have some say in that regard. I think the short answer in a way is the musical director. So every now and again, I'm the musical director. Most oftentimes, Alec Foster or Boris Kozlov are the musical director, so they choose the set. But the great thing about those guys in particular and the band is, like I said, it is a democracy somewhat. So especially on the road, it's amazing how democracy works on the road. But we'll, for example, we'll be at a gig and we'll have, let's say, a set of we'll have a half a dozen tunes that maybe Sue or people in the office wanted us to play, make sure we play. But then there's still another half a dozen more tunes to pick for a show. So we might try to do some sort of mix and ask cats, and a lot of times that ends up in a before the show argument for like 40 minutes. But the other interesting thing about this band is that generally when we're on the road and we get into some spats backstage, that's usually going to be a really, really good set. So, like I said, it all adds to it.
And let's do one more. What do you like most about playing with the Mingus Big Band compared to other ensembles?
What do I like most? That's a good question. There are a lot of things that I like about it. I think the thing I like the most is the freedom that it gives me to be myself, and to approach the music in any way that I want. I definitely, I've been playing in the band for 20 years, so I've definitely developed my own identity and my own concept for how I want to play now, and I definitely hold true to that in general. But I think really depending on my mood, if I'm just feeling like really out there and I'm playing a Mingus tune and I want to just go out, I can do that, and it's really not an issue because that's just where it went. I mean, in some bands that I'm in, I have a great time and I'm myself. But if I feel like just going nuts because that's just how I feel at that particular moment, I'm not necessarily free to do that. If I in the same token, if I'm playing, sometimes I'll be playing with the band and I'll really, I'll be listening to a lot of, I don't know, let's say Lester Young, for example, or Gene Ammons, or I'll be listening to some different kind of stuff. And maybe for my solo, I'll want to just kind of coast in that kind of area. And again, the music lends itself to that. So it's really free and open to kind of do whatever I want, whenever I want.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, that sort of leads into another question that was asked. How do you approach developing your solos over Mingus tunes? And we'll wrap it up with this one and continue.
Well, that's something that, again, that I've developed over the years because, again, Mingus's music is very challenging. And one of the things that, when I first joined the band, one of the things that I had to deal with right away, and granted, I had done a lot of things before I joined the band too. I played with different people, and I had some small accomplishments, but I still had plenty of work to do. And when I joined the band, one of the first things that jumped out to me is, okay, I really have to be 100% able to play any sort of chord changes in any sequence at any tempo at any given time. I mean, first and foremost, I have to be, in order for me to be able to play free and to try to develop some sort of identity and try to create a musical solo, I can't be stumbling over difficult chord changes. It just can't happen. So I was already pretty okay at playing changes and stuff like that because I studied with Jack McLean and that's what he was all about, amongst other things. But because of the challenging keys and the time shifts and the tempos, and because the question was how do I develop my solos, because I was really into developing my solos and getting having a nice theme and developing it and all that. It can't happen if I'm stumbling over these changes. So it made me just really just deal with harmony even more than I already was. So you're asking me how I develop my solo, and the first thing I have to do is I have to be free. I have to be free. And the only way to be free is for chord changes not to be an issue. So I don't know if that directly answers the question, but that's just something that's in my mind when I hear that question.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll play a little something, and hopefully there'll be some more questions. And I think I mentioned Lester Young a minute ago, so maybe I'll play one of Mingus's most known pieces. And someone also asked what was my favorite Mingus piece to play, and this is definitely one of my favorite Mingus pieces to play. It's also one of the most challenging in a lot of ways, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit afterwards. But anyway, this is a composition that Mingus wrote in celebration of the life and legacy of the great saxophonist Lester Young. This is Goodbye Porcupine Hat. hope you guys enjoyed that. That was Charles Mingus's Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. As the story goes, the guys were on a gig. He and his band were on a gig, and I guess they had just heard that Lester Young passed away. And of course, Lester Young was so important to this music, and I'm sure it was important to everyone in the band, and I'm sure they knew him personally. And the story goes that the guys just played a blues. They just played an E-flat blues, and all of these amazing different kind of chord changes came up that the guys were playing. And Mingus thought it was so beautiful and so powerful that he went home that night and kind of just tried to jot down what he remembered that the guys played of all these different alterations and beautiful sounds. And so he came up with Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. And it's gone on to be one of his most recognized songs and one of his most beautiful songs and one of the most challenging songs that he's written. Are there any questions out there? I see someone ask me if I'm playing a number 4 reed. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm no Charlie Parker or Sonny Rollins. Although it's good if it sounds like it's a hard reed. You know, I think a lot of people think that you're supposed to play a really hard reed. And notoriously, I believe Bird did play a hard reed, as did Sonny Rollins. But actually, a lot of people played soft reeds. Like if you talk to Phil Woods about his reed strength, or even if my good friend and Mingus colleague Vincent Herring, if you talk to a lot of those guys, actually they play a pretty soft reed and are able to get a huge sound. And I think, at least for me, sound is more about balance. So if you have a softer reed with a larger mouthpiece, and I have a very big mouthpiece, I play like a 9-star. So if you have a softer reed with a big mouthpiece, it has that balance, you know. And I think the smaller your mouthpiece, probably the harder reed strength you want to have. So I actually play a pretty soft reed, but I play a really large mouthpiece.
Somebody also asked what saxophone you're using.
I am using a super balanced action tenor, and every time I'm online or doing one of these sort of question answer things, someone brings up the saxophone that I lost. And at this point, it's okay. I can talk about it. This horn that I have right here and right now is a super balanced action tenor. It's like the same model that Coltrane played, you know, in the 50s and 60s. I actually got this horn, I remember, because I got it 11 years ago. 11 years ago, I lost my old super balanced action horn and mouthpiece in a taxi cab in New York City. And that was pretty much the most horrible thing that's ever happened to me in my life. But through, and I'll say this, actually, this is a good, why I mention this, through good support of a good friend of mine named Alonzo Wright. He's a great saxophone player and a technician and sound guy and road manager. He helped me find this horn. This used to be Bob Franceschini's tenor saxophone, another great saxophone player who played with Mike Stern, amongst others. And with a generous gift of support from the Jazz Foundation of America, they helped me get this horn. So this horn's pretty special to me. And that's that. It's a super balanced action. I did try other horns like Ichimori. I think they're a great horn, and also R.S. Berkeley are some great horns that I use from time to time. But oftentimes I end up playing this super balanced action.
I love it. Let's sort of reconfigure a little bit and talk a little bit about when and how you joined the band.
Sure. That's kind of an interesting story, actually. So a few of my good friends were in the band. Some of my closest friends, Jonathan Blake, a great drummer who still plays in the band from time to time. He was in the band. And also a good friend of mine, Jeremy Pelt. Incidentally, the three of us started Black Art Jazz Collective together, so we're really close. And they always used to invite me down to sit in with the band when the band played at Fez, at the Time Cafe in the Village. So I would do that quite often. And the band played on Thursdays. And this was in 2000. I moved to New York in 99. This is 2000. And I would always go down, and I think I sat in once. I was nervous as heck and played on a blues or something. And Sue was kind of hot and kind of lukewarm, to me. But then one Thanksgiving morning, I got a phone call from Sue Mingus, and she was like, Wayne, would you want to come down and play with the band tonight? And I was like, yeah. And the thing is, I was in New York. I didn't really have any family here. I had nothing to do on Thanksgiving. And because it was Thanksgiving, a lot of the regular guys went home. So, the band was, as far as I was concerned, going to be a whole bunch of subs because no one was around. So I went down and I took my seat, and down the aisle was like Vincent Herring, I think Alex Foster, John Stubblefield, and in the back was Randy Brecker. I think Jeremy Pell was on the gig. On drums was Jeff Tane Watts. On piano was Dave Kikoski. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is crazy. So all of my, the guys that I would hear playing all the time, and a lot of the, the younger heroes of mine were all in the band. So that was my first gig with the Mingus Band in Thanksgiving of 2000. And and she kept calling me from then. Seamus was the steady first tenor at that time, and he was getting busy doing a lot of other stuff. So I ended up getting called quite a bit to sub for him, and then eventually I was just ended up being pretty regular call. So that's how that began.
Nice. Do you have any standout musical moments over the years?
Actually, yeah, I do. What's funny is I'm using this more than a play along, and I mentioned that the rhythm section is Boris Kozlov, our man Tommy Campbell, and John Hicks. And I don't know, first of all, people really should know about John Hicks, a great pianist who played with Mingus and played with many, many other people, Lee Morgan and countless of other musicians, a really great pianist that we lost maybe around 2006 or 8 or something like that. And I was on a tour with the band and Hicks and Stubblefields and Ronnie Cuber, all the usual suspects back then were on the gig. And people I don't think people know this about John Hicks, but some of the most beautiful solo piano that I've ever heard in my entire life in any genre was been played by John Hicks. And he's the most amazing, and I say that with no disrespect to anyone else, but I mean, just so you know what the gravity of what I'm talking about. Before I moved to New York, I was in the Thelonious Monk Institute, and I was fortunate enough to do a small tour with Herbie Hancock, who everybody knows who Herbie Hancock is. And every night on that tour for several weeks, I got to hear Herbie Hancock. Not only did I get to play with Herbie Hancock, but I got to hear him play solo every night. He would play Maiden Voyage, he would play a lot of his pieces solo. And up until I heard John Hicks play solo, hearing Herbie play solo every night was the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. And then I went on the road with the Mingus Band, and I got to hear John Hicks play solo every night. And his solo playing is magnificent, and to this day blows my mind. So that's something that I hope people really look out for. Check out John Hicks more, and something that I'll never forget: the power of his solo piano playing. Someone asked me if there was an inherent sound in the vintage horns. Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think the vintage horns have a definitely certain sound, but ultimately the sound is you, not your horn, So, I mean, I can get the sound that I want on pretty much most horns. For me, it's not so much about the sound, even though, yes, I do think it has an inherent thing. For me, I think it's more about the feel. So if I choose a horn, I choose a horn because I can get around it. Again, just like I was saying about creating a good solo and all that, about being comfortable and not having the chord changes hinder you. It's the same thing with the instrument. I want to play an instrument that I don't have to think about playing, that plays everything where I need it to be. It's smooth and there's no issues. So, and then I can get the sound that I want. I can do whatever I want to do. So for me, in a way, it's more about the feel of the vintage horns than anything else that I end up keep gravitating towards it.
Yes. What about Mingus do you think people relate to?
Well, I probably, one of the many things, but one of them I think would be his soulfulness. What's great about Mingus is a lot of these tunes are really just reorganized blues forms of some sort. There's a lot of blues and a lot of gospel music in Mingus's music, in addition to Western classical and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool, and I think a lot of people can just relate to the blues and just to groove. And along those lines, on a more personal note, as far as Mingus goes, I didn't get a chance to meet Mingus. I didn't know Mingus personally, but I know the legend of Mingus, not just from reading books, but also from his widow Sue Mingus. So, Mingus had a very dynamic personality, and one of the things that I love about Mingus, and I relate to him through this at least, is that he kind of didn't give a bleep. So if he was in a bad mood and he was grumpy and he wanted to go tell someone that they should go and whatever themselves, he would do that, and he would mean it. And if the audience wasn't listening and he was bothered by that, he would say it and he would mean it. Along other lines, when he really loved someone and thought that someone was beautiful and thought that they deserved to know that, I think that he would let them know that. And he was a very sentimental person as well. So I know for myself, I have a lot of strong opinions, but I don't always feel that I can voice them because I'm more concerned with what people are going to think about me, or I'm concerned about the environment. And I think in some ways, a lot of us wish we could be more like someone like Charles Mingus, who would just say whatever the heck he wanted whenever he wanted to say it. I think we would all love to be able to feel that free. So I know I admire that about him.
Love it, love it. It's interesting you say something about the blues. Can you talk about Mingus's treatment of the blues throughout his music?
Well, I don't know that I can do that well, but one of the things, at least with a song like Goodbye Pork Pie had, and something that I've tried to do in some of my compositions as well, is keeping the flavor, keeping the melodic content of the blues, right? But changing the harmonic undertone of that, And I think that's really a really beautiful thing to do. And I think you can create so many different sounding melodies just by keeping that, even just, little things that we all try to do. Just keeping that same blues melodic content, but changing the underlying harmony is a beautiful thing and not something to be underestimated.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to play us out, we can round up with some more questions and go from there.
Yeah. Why don't I, since I did mention Sue and I love her so much. She's done so much for not only the musicians in the Mingus band by employing us, and not only, but she's also just done a lot for Mingus's music. Not only she's done a lot for Mingus's music, and doing all she's done to make sure that this music lives on and gets celebrated by a lot of different people, but she's just done a lot for the jazz community, and all of us personally. She's really an amazing person. And like I said before, Mingus had no problems expressing his feelings in that regard, and wrote some beautiful love songs and tributes to her and other people. This song I'm going to play now is a composition that he wrote for her, and he appropriately titled it Sue's Changes. I think those of us who know Sue know what that means, Sue's Changes. All right. We're going to bring back the band. Where is he? Where is it? Here we go.
Sue's Changes. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sue's changes. So I'd like to remind everybody that while we are doing this for the love of the music, we're not only doing this for the love of the music. Please donate to the musicians that keep this happening. You know, we're in a difficult situation now that we're stuck at home, but we are very fortunate that people like Sue Mingus and her organization and a lot of other people are doing their best to keep us making music and keep us playing. So if you like what you're hearing and you want to support the Mingus Band, please go ahead and go to paypal.me. whatever else it says, Mingus Bands, all right? Paypal.me, Mingus Band, you can see it. I can't see it from here. Please do that, we appreciate it. Also, I'd like to send a big, huge birthday shout out to a Mingus alumnus, Mr. Jack Walrath. Bad dude, played in the Mingus Dynasty for several years, and he's another one. Unique sound, amazing technician, a great writer, and has arranged some nice pieces for the Mingus Band. So we want to send a special birthday shout out to Jack, and I hope to see and play with him very soon. Any last questions before we get out of here?
What is your favorite Sue story?
My favorite Sue story? Oh no.
Yeah.
Do I have any Sue story that I can tell? Well, I won't necessarily tell a Sue. Well, I'll tell a little story. Yeah, well, it's not really a story, but well, first of all, one amazing thing about Sue is that up until only the last few years, she was traveling on the road with us the entire time. I mean, and we were on, 12-hour bus rides going through Spain, and, I'd be or all over the place. Italy is hot, the air conditioner's broken. You hear cats in the back complaining, this bus isn't comfortable. I want to sleep now, complaining about stuff. And you go to Sue in the front, and she's awake, or sleeping, whatever. She was chilling, telling jokes, completely cool, and didn't faze her at all. And she'd show up, and she was giving 100%, talking on the mic, doing what she needed to do. And I mean, she was, much older than we were, and it didn't even faze her at all. It's one of the strongest women I've ever met in my entire life. One other small little interesting thing about Sue is back when I was playing at Fez, one of the first gigs I did with the orchestra, we were playing Toto Moto. It's a pretty involved piece. And there's a little section that has kind of a solo saxophone and trumpet back and forth section. It's a really beautiful moment. And there was one note that I got wrong. And no one in the audience noticed because I played it with such conviction and it was beautiful. But at the end of the set, Sue was like, "That was very nice, Wayne, but you played one wrong note." And then she sang it back to me and she knew exactly what the hell she was talking about. And that's Sue. A lot of people maybe over the years might say, "Oh, well, so-and-so's not a musician. They shouldn't be saying anything." But she's been around this music. She's listened to it for decades and years. And she knows what she's hearing. She might not know exactly the theory behind all of it, but she knows exactly what's right and what's wrong, and she'll tell you. So that's a beautiful thing about Sue.
Yeah. There's so many style and tempo changes. How is it to approach that in a big band setting?
It's challenging. You have to have a great rhythm section. I mean, we're in the Mingus Band are very blessed to have people like, Donald Edwards and Jonathan Blake and Tommy Campbell, all these guys. You have to and you have to have a great, strong rhythm section. I just mentioned drummers, but it also can't happen unless you have an amazing bass player like Boris Kozlov is. And when he's not there, I'm always sad, because again, you want to be free with this music, and part of being free with Mingus's music is to be able to approach it rhythmically in a variety of ways and be ready to do so. And when you have a rhythm section, like especially when people like, if one of my favorite rhythm sections is Boris Kikoski and Jonathan Blake, or Boris Kikoski and Donald Edwards. There's a lot of great combinations that I like, but I mentioned them in particular. Is when I have that, I look back there and I see certain cats. I'm like, okay, I know that this is going to be able to go in a lot of different directions. So rhythmically, it's not as challenging as it. Well, it's definitely challenging, but it's not as difficult as it might seem when you have such a great rhythm section. When you don't. And you still want to do some of these things, because even when I lead the band, the opportunities that I get to lead the band, I always want to try to do something different, like rhythmically, but it really depends on the rhythm section I have, and I hesitate to try it when it's not the right rhythm section.
Yeah. That's so funny. And someone in the comments says they're going to transcribe you.
Maybe I should transcribe myself, learn a
Hey.
little something. But thank you. I hope you
Thank you so much, Wayne. We'll leave you with one more question.
Sure.
What does Mingus mean to you?
Mingus to me means self-expression. It means freedom. It means the blues. It means the soul, and it means juxtaposition. Is that the right word? A juxtaposition of beauty, of dirtiness, and of everything that the world has to offer. There you go.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Wayne. This was awesome. A sort of switch up on the format. I was really enjoying getting to talk to you and ask you some questions. Next week, we have Lauren Sevian playing, which we're very excited about as well. So we're opening it up to the horn players, and we thank you for kicking us off.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And everyone out there, thank you for listening. And follow me on Instagram and all that. Follow the Mingus Band, and let's stay in touch. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right.